Welcome to the Science of Parenting podcast, where we connect you with research based information that fits your family. We'll talk about the realities of raising kids and how research can help guide our parenting decisions. I'm Mackenzie Johnson, parent of two littles with their own quirks, and I'm a parenting educator.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Bartholomew. I'm an associate professor who strives to help people increase their financial security, and I'm a parent of a high schooler.
Yes, I'll say, and Suzanne's back. We did not scare her off. Love that for us. I'll say, first episode down. How do you feel about podcasting? How are we doing?
Well, I'm having a lot of fun. I don't think I should be getting paid for it. It's that,
Ooh,
that work ethic guilt I'm experiencing right now, but no, this is fun.
it's not
I
hard
can't.
enough. Oh, great! I love that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not suffering enough. That's what I was taught, I guess. I need to suffer while I'm working.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
we really like we're just here. We're all hanging out, just talking about interesting things, like things that fascinate us.
Yeah, I
That's what
love
the
it. I'm
podcast
so
is.
fortunate.
Yeah.
I'm so
We
glad you
love it.
focused on money this season.
Oh, well, we're really glad to have you helping us focus on it. And I was even sharing a story with with our team earlier about like this is what happens. We do a podcast season on a topic and then it like infiltrates my relationships with my children. And so then I have content for our upcoming episodes because I'm always thinking about whatever we're doing on the podcast. That really like that works out. That works out for me.
It does, man. You're a great financial parent right now.
Oh, look at me. Oh my gosh, look at me go. All this growth, Suzanne. I'm doing all this growth.
And the healthy eating, I hope that's still happening. I hope those lessons
Right?
stuck. Yeah.
We're making some healthful choices from the previous podcast season on kids and food. And yeah, the conversations we have because like, yes, I didn't think about that before. Oh, yeah. So it infiltrates, which is great. That's the goal, right? Hopefully it's infiltrating you listeners
And it
as
sticks.
well.
Lessons
So,
that
well,
stick.
for today we are going to dig in. You may have noticed this pattern in last season with Lindy and I mean even like our discipline season, our regulation. This is like a pattern we're establishing is often after we introduce this kind of whatever topic we have for the season, our second episode has been on this kind of theme of like reflection on what influences, right? What goes into all this stuff? And so we're following that pattern again this season. And we're going to talk about what influences our money decisions and our finances. So I do think it's important. I don't really know if we talked about it in the first episode that money can be tricky, right? Like and I mean, you have talked about some of with me even about some of the literature behind it of like how much we talk about it, why we don't. But I do think like let's acknowledge as we are going to be reflecting this episode, for some of us, money feels taboo.
Yes, yes. So we're going to
Mhm.
be focusing on, what we learned in our experience growing up. And so for some
Mhm.
of us, money was taboo, is private, secret, versus
Mhm.
others may have been in a really open household. So yeah, we do bring our own lived experience to the table
Oh,
for all
we
these
definitely
topics.
do. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The way we were raised, right? There's all kinds of parenting literature on that. Like the way we were raised, I almost want to use that word infiltrate again. But right, but it trickles down. It trickles into our parenting consciously, right? There are some things we're like, "Oh my gosh, I love how my parents did that. I want to do that." And there are some things that we're like, "I did not like how my parents did that." And it shows up in our parenting unconsciously, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so it is like all of our experiences influence how we influence our kids for sure. And actually, you told a story about food. We're going to tie together season 10 and season 11. Like this little anecdote that's like, I mean, parable almost, like a little story that is a great way to recognize, right? What is passed on.
Yeah, yeah. So we're talking about how well in the first in how generation to generation habits and
Mm-hmm.
values are passed on. So the
Mm-hmm.
parable of the ham or the turkey in your case
Yeah,
is
I heard it as turkey, but
as the
ham is great.
turkey. Yeah. So the idea that a child is watching her mom or his mom uh, prepare a ham for a holiday, and
Mm-hmm.
she cuts off the end, throws the end into the garbage can, and the child says, "Why did you throw the ham into the garbage can? Why are we wasting that ham?" And so she said, "Well, it's because the way my mom did it." So
Mm-hmm.
the child goes to grandpa because grandma's not around anymore and says, "Hey,
Mm-hmm.
why did grandma cut the end of the ham or turkey off?" And he said, "Oh, well, because her pan wasn't large enough to fit the full ham in." So I think it is a great illustration of how, as parents, we how we're imprinted by our parents
Mhm.
and how we imprint our children with whatever those traditions, gifts, maybe we don't see them as gifts, are passed on to us in our childhood experience.
Mhm. And yes, the things that we take on, I mean, take on, if you will, as like, yes, this is a family value. It's like, this is the way you do it. This is the way you make ham. And it's like, well, that was the way she made ham for a very specific reason.
Yeah, exactly,
And I think
exactly.
that I mean, yes, this episode we get to dig into a model. All you listeners know I'm excited. As we dig into a model this episode, I do think about we want to honor that our parents were showing up one typically in the best way they knew how, right, they were showing up in the best way they knew how to show up for us, and that there may be really specific things that informed their decisions and their actions and their communication that we may or may not be privy to. Right, there might be some things that we're like, oh, I recognize this might have been as a result of they had some scarcity, right? There were times when they didn't always have enough, or this might be a result of this specific experience. But there's going to be things we don't know why. So we do want to assume the positive intent of the people who cared for us, right? Our caregivers, from the generation before us. But we do know it passes from generation to generation. Parenting does, just like financial parenting passes from generation to generation.
Yeah, yeah. So anybody, we cross paths with will be happy to tell us about a lesson that they've learned from their parents.
Hmm.
They
All the
people
time.
have very specific examples of things that they've taken away. And
Hmm.
yeah, I love that you're calling out that we're gonna assume best intentions about
Yeah.
our parents and their parenting.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
So let's dig in. I mean, to your comfort level, of course, of let's reflect. Let's take this moment to say, okay, what was the money context, this financial context that we were raised in that imprinted on us? Um,
Yeah.
so if you're willing
Okay.
to share, Suzanne, what are a few things that come to mind for you about money and the way you were raised?
All right. Well, I was raised in a traditional household with a working father and
Mm,
a mom that stayed at home. Didn't work until she maybe I was in high school.
okay.
Yeah. So in reflecting upon it, I think about last week we talked about the two types of financial socialization. So
Mm-hmm.
explicit socialization is where parents are going to be teaching lessons very intentionally about money. That was not my parents. They were implicit financial
Okay.
socializers. Okay. So they modeled certain behaviors, but they never really taught me any behaviors or skills around money.
Okay.
So I have to really think about, okay, so they weren't really explicit about what they wanted, but so what did I carry with me as a result of them not teaching me anything? And so
Mm,
when I think about that, my dad really modeled the importance of a strong work ethic and earning
mm,
income. Right. So that was
mhm.
instilled in me, like why I said I have to suffer at work, maybe. He never missed a
That's what
day of
hard work is.
work, wasn't late, was a model employee. And so,
Mhm.
but my parents never encouraged me to work.
Mm,
And it actually was my peers that, invited me, hey, well, I'm going to go work a birthday party with pony rides. You want to come with? And so, okay, yeah. So that was my first, paid job, but it wasn't my parents
mm.
saying, get out there and try and get some experience. I think the importance of paying bills on time
Oh.
and paying bills is
Mhm.
another lesson. And this example I'm going to use really, I think, illustrates that parenting never stops. So my 87-year-old mother, when in her last month of life, and she was, house, whatever, homebound, hospital bound,
Mm.
called me, and it was during COVID because we can only talk on the phone, said, hey, you got to pay my Best Buy bill. I'm like, this is what you're thinking
Oh.
about in your last, few months last few
Mm.
weeks of life. And so just to the very end, that she just really was a believer. You pay your bills, you pay them on time. Um,
Yes.
yeah, and then she also taught me comparison shopping, buying things on sale, going for a bargain. She was an antique collector and liked to
Yes.
go to garage sales because you can get good deals there. And as an adolescent, I would sit in the car and be totally embarrassed, but
You're like, "No."
like, no way, I can't believe this. But no, lo and behold, I'm a total resale garage sale shopper now. She was right all along. It just took a little while for me to catch on. So those
Oh,
are just a
funny.
couple of examples, I think, that I mean, and
Yes.
generosity is the other big thing. My
Mm.
parents were both very generous people,
Mhm.
and shared their resources to a fault, I think, in some cases,
Oh.
to their own
Mhm.
detriment at times.
Mm.
So yeah, I think that is what they modeled for me.
Yes.
And
Yes.
neither are around
Interesting.
anymore. I can't ask them, if it was
Mm.
intentional or not, but
Yes. Yeah, I
yeah.
was like, but here you are, right?
Yeah.
Like with
Yeah.
some of these gifts and opportunities and challenges, and it's passed on. Absolutely.
Yeah. So how about
Uh,
you?
well, I can relate to the like bargain shopping, right? That like there's a skill set, right? There's a value there. And for me, I picture it almost as like stewardship, right? Like making good use of what you have as
Mhm.
like a value around money. Yeah, there's a value, but there's also like a skill set of like I know even the knowledge of like things go on sale around this time, right? Even knowing like in the US we have Black Friday, and if you need to make a big purchase, maybe you could wait until a good sale, like some of that knowledge and stuff. So yeah, sales shopping. And I would say in terms of our like financial state, for most of my life, I would say we were kind of in a we had enough, but not a lot of extra. So like I remember as a kid feeling like, well, I mean, probably won't ask for that. Like like that's a lot to ask for, but we certainly had enough. I was fortunate to have a lot of opportunities and like extracurriculars and things that, my parent chose to make a financial priority, and so it's not like I never had any opportunities, but there wasn't a ton of extra rolling around all the time. So yeah, this idea of like stewardship, like earn your money and then use it wisely was one.
Mm.
An explicit thing, my mom always talked about like the 79-cent notebook method. So basically it was like the super cheap ruled notebook, like lined notebook. And that was kind of how my parent approached doing like budgeting and making sure all the bills were paid and making a financial plan for like the month, week, year. And so that was kind of a process of I don't actually remember, I guess, explicitly having that like conversation, like teaching, this is how you do this. But I remember that like being talked about. And yeah, I remember the 79-cent notebook. It's probably not 79 cents anymore, but that's how it's always been referred to. And then the other thing that I think is interesting is that I feel like my parent often, especially as I think about being like a teenager, it was like the idea that I should like go to school, get a good job, like go have more opportunity maybe than they had was kind of
Mhm.
a value that was passed on.
Mhm.
So yeah, like get good scholarships, be active in, things that are going to help you get scholarships, go to a good school, get good grades. Like so kind of this focus on like investing right now to have in the future. So it wasn't necessarily like investing in whatever, like financially, as much as like invest in yourself to go so that you have more things down the line was kind of a value. Um
Yeah, yeah, same in my
yeah.
household. It was never it was always
Yes.
an expectation that I would go to school and get an advanced
Mhm.
degree.
Mhm.
But, my father, his, mom didn't want him to go to college, and he was the first person in
Mm.
his family to go and get a degree.
Yes.
And so but she thought that the value of working was more important, and so luckily
Mm.
she luckily he didn't listen to that,
That wasn't the
that
right
particular
path for him.
parenting behavior, yeah, or parenting
Yes.
advice, yeah.
Yes. Oh, interesting. So we do, like, we all wanna just acknowledge, I mean, Suzanne and I and everybody listening, we're walking in here with our own, I like the imprint word that you used, Suzanne, like,
Mhm.
with our own imprint from how we
Yeah.
were raised that influences how we interact with our kids around money, what we do and do not want to teach them about money. And so that's kinda what we dig into. We have this model, right? And Suzanne, gave me the terminology. It's a model of financial action. I like that.
Mhm.
Model of
Mhm.
financial action from the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, which I think all season I'm just gonna be like, yeah, they're cool. The CFPB, the
Love
Consumer
them.
Finance Protection Bureau. But they have this model that they put out, the model of financial action of things that influence our financial well-being. So what actually, like, what are these influences? Why do I do what I do with money? And so it
Yeah,
starts out with kind of a big three, right? There's like a main three. Can you just like give us a rundown really quick? What are those three? And then we'll dig into them.
sure, yeah, so there's 6 altogether in the model of financial action,
Mhm.
and the model before I jump into the big 3,
Please.
which, I will in a second, but they're really, the model really demonstrates that we are in control of some of the things around us that can help
Mm,
us, become financially well, and then there are things that we aren't in control
yes.
of, and our financial decisions and our don't happen in isolation, right? And
Mhm.
so some of these things are going to help us be financial healthy others are not. So the big three,
Yes.
and we talked about them in last week's podcast, are the three drivers of financial wellness, right? And so the first one is behavior. The
Mhm.
second one is knowledge, and then the third one is personality. And
Yes.
so what the model tells us is that if the environment is set up to unlock our abilities, these three drivers are not as important because
Okay.
we can unleash, things that may I say things, but yeah, that if the environment is set up, if there are structures in place, financial decision making becomes easier. In a way, there's not as many barriers, and so we don't have to
Mhm.
have like for personality. We don't have to have that really strong trait of, say, perseverance or grit because there's not anything standing in our
Mm.
way. So that's the idea, and a model of financial action or the model, our human tendencies are not to act if you I think might touch on this, if we're
Yes.
overwhelmed, there are a
I
lot of
feel that
things
way
that yeah,
sometimes.
we're procrastinators, we kick things down the road. So should we jump into each of
Yes,
these
I do
drivers?
wanna I just wanna, like, pause and you said that to me earlier, what you just said about the environment, and it, like, didn't lock in, like, it didn't register. So I wanna repeat it back because I'm like, "Whoa, that's
Yeah, yeah.
insightful." Okay, so I wanna make sure I understand it correctly. When the environment is essentially set up for success, these, like, quote, unquote, "big 3" aren't as big, right? Like, when the
Yeah.
environment is created to be, like, conducive to, like, helpful and healthful decisions, big 3 are still important, but, like, the environment is really the click. Okay, got it. The
Yeah, isn't
environment,
that
big deal,
cool?
right?
Yeah, yeah, so
Okay.
you don't need these 3 big
Yeah.
things quite as much. Yeah, so the first thing, behavior, what you
Mhm,
actually do. So are you effectively managing your money? And
mhm,
so there's kind of 2 things related to that, and it's just income and expenses. So the money that
mm.
comes in, are you gainfully employed? And
Yeah,
if
your
you become
behavior.
unemployed, are you gonna do everything you can to get a job, whether no matter what the
Mhm,
job, so that you're bringing resources into the household?
mhm,
And then the second piece with the routine and effective money management is this money going out. So, are you living within your
yes.
means? Are you intentional about your lifestyle? Are you frugal? Are
Mm.
you saving money? Are you avoiding and managing your debt if you do have it? Are you using credit cards prudently? So, those are
Oh,
kind of the
yes.
things about behavior.
Absolutely. Well, and I think I was like, okay, in the mindset of like financial action, thinking about it myself and thinking about what like my children, right? What influences my children. I think this idea of like, do I do what I mean to do is really what I thought of with behavior. Like, I would
Yeah.
like to save for this thing. There, I'm using thing. um, or like I would like to, right? And like I would like to share more of my money, or I would like to be more generous, or right, whatever the intention is, does our
Yeah.
behavior follow the intention? Is kind of what I felt like in terms of financial action. Am I doing what I mean to do?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
Oh, good. Who
You
behavior?
did.
I
Yeah,
got
yeah.
it. I got that one. What about knowledge and skills?
So knowledge and skills, do you what you know and what you know how to do. So
Mm,
do you know how to seek out information that's reliable and unbiased? Can you
yes.
process that information? And then once
Mm,
you have the information, can you act on it and make a financial decision?
yes.
So it's not so much what we know. We don't have to memorize facts about credit
Mm,
cards and credit scores or mortgages or, that kind of thing.
mm-hmm.
The factual knowledge, it's important, but it's really how to do things, how to get your hands on the knowledge when you need it.
Yes.
And most people in terms of, their interest in learning about finances is usually only when it's a timely and a relevant topic. I'm
Oh,
buying a
yeah.
house, so I need to know this information. Well, you're gonna learn all that information and then probably download all of it out of your brain when you're done with
Mm-hmm.
it, right? So there's
Oh,
no
yeah.
point in having
Offload
like
that.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Offload it. And so, I mean, you'll have a mass of knowledge, but it's really the
Mm.
doing things, being having the consumer literacy.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
and numeracy, that
Mm,
kind of thing. That definitely
absolutely.
go with financial decisions.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, and the note that I wrote as we talked through this, that I was like, "Okay, how does this, like, click in for me?" And yeah, I really thought about that process knowledge, right? So as we think about ourselves with the knowledge and skills that we have financially, yes, do I know how to fill out Like, do I know how to get a loan if that's something I need? Do I know which places to get a loan will leave me, right, are going to be like greater risk versus safer? Do I know about, yeah, like saving for retirement? Or even I think as simple as like, do I know how to pay this bill? Right? Do I need to
Yeah.
drop this off? Do I pay it online? How do I log in? Do I know the login? Like,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
all knowledge and skills. And so, I mean, yeah,
And
as we think
we
about it
think
being like
about
a
the
big three.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And if we think about the environment, marketers and manufacturers, companies, they make it really easy for us to buy things and
Mm.
maybe not so easy to pay for things, right? So that's
Mm.
something in our context.
Mhm. And I even think of like when I have subscribed, right, for like a payment, right? Like I would like to subscribe to this thing. How hard, like I need to know how to unsubscribe. How do I cancel? How do I get out of this
Oh,
commitment? I mean, subscription, that's like more popular in today's economy. But right, like
sure.
I have a thing on layaway. I think of like that language. We don't use that language very often anymore, that concept.
Yeah.
But there is this knowing how to get out of a financial situation that's not great for us. Um,
Yes, and
Whether
those
that be
companies will
debt, right?
yeah, and those companies will
Mm.
hope like, "Oh, hopefully it'll take them a month or 2 to figure it out so we can get a couple more payments out of them
Yes,
before, and maybe charge a little
guilty,
bit." Yeah.
guilty. I
Yep.
get overwhelmed because I couldn't figure out how to, or the places that will make I'm exposing myself a little here. If I have to call to cancel, that is
Uh,
hard. Let me do it via email or let me like click a button to unsubscribe. No,
for
if I have
such
to
a
call, I
seeming
don't like that.
extrovert that you are,
Right,
you
like,
don't
I'm
wanna
giving
make
away
that
my
phone call.
generational age, and I don't wanna call. I'll talk on the phone. I don't wanna call for that. I don't like
Yeah.
that.
Oh, I
But
know.
again, that's like the knowledge, the process, and even that familiarity can be a skill, right? Like how familiar you are with a process like that.
Oh,
Okay, so
yeah.
behavior, knowledge and skills, and what's our third one?
Alright, so the third one, personality and attitude. So how you tend to think, feel, and act. So
Mhm.
these qualities influence financial well-being. They influence your financial behavior. They also are kind of influence your behavior, how behave your knowledge impacts your behavior.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you a driven person? Are you a
Mm,
planner? Are you materialistic? Do you possess grit or perseverance?
yes.
So the personalities really in the last decade come into the scholarship on financial literacy and capability,
Mm.
with, thinking about the big 5, conscientiousness being the one
Ooh, yeah.
factor that is, if you're conscientious, you follow through on things. There's sort of those executive function skills
Mhm.
that we'll talk about, later in the season.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, yeah, the big 5 personality, right? That's a really common tool for measuring personality in the research. And that's interesting to think about exploring the connection between your personality and money, that's getting a lot of attention in literature is what you're saying?
Yeah, 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 it is.
Interesting.
With conscientiousness in
That in
it's still mixed, but that seems to
Mhm.
be one that is associated with healthy financial behaviors.
Interesting. That makes sense because conscientiousness is kind of that, like, planning, intention, right? Am I I'm
Yes,
not super
and that
familiar.
grittiness, that
Mm.
perseverance. If you're conscientious,
Yes.
you're not gonna not pay your bill. You're not gonna be
Mhm.
late with your bill because you're
Yes.
conscientious.
Oh, that
So it
makes
makes
sense,
sense, a lot of the
right?
science makes sense.
Mhm. Well, and it's interesting as I, of course, thought of myself. Maybe is that narcissism? Is that one of the big 5? Um,
Oh,
thinking
yeah,
of
sorry.
myself, but I even like the personality trait, and this can be a temperament, right? This can be related. Temperament fits in here, personality, attitudes, temperament, impulsivity. So I
Oh, yeah.
actually, I don't know if I've shared this with listeners before. I was diagnosed with ADHD within the last year, last year, and so
Oh,
I think of right on the spectrum of like we have personality and we have temperament and then we have like diagnosis, right, is in there. And the impulsivity that can come with that and the procrastination, right, of like that is kind of an attitude of like, oh, I can't, like, I won't be dealing with that yet. But yeah, the impulsivity is, I've seen interest. I mean, I haven't been reading so much in the literature right now. I'm like exploring it on social media. That's like my starting place for learning. But
ye
finding some accounts that I trust. But yeah, learning about the connection between ADHD, impulsivity, and money, and impulsivity and food, and impulsivity in parenting. What? But so yeah, there's a lot that goes into who we are, like my internal resources, who I am, what I believe, how I interact with the world. Naturally, that influences some of your financial decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. And
Mhm.
so I'm sure can you think of an example where you see it in your spending or any of your other financial behaviors that you
I
weren't aware
only
of?
see it in my spending, but no, I'm just kidding. Um,
So
no, I do.
impulsive
I think
shopping sometimes?
about yeah, absolutely. And I can be really before we did a lot of online shopping, like as a family. My partner used to tease me when we'd be like at a place. He is a like buy the list shopper. And
Oh, okay.
I am much more prone to like, oh, but what about like, oh, look at this idea. Like part of that is creativity, but part of it is impulsivity.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so that versus he like, this is the mindset. This is what we do. I am not so interested in being flexible on the list. And I'm like, oh, whatever. And so yes, I can see that in spending sometimes. Sometimes it works to my advantage of and I don't know whether I'm like cheating my brain on this, but like if I don't know what to choose, I just will like I'm overwhelmed by this decision. I'm just gonna choose whatever feels like is probably more responsible. Right?
Mm,
Though that could be misinformed depending on the knowledge that I have. But yeah, the shopping
true.
in particular, especially online, right? Now that we're in a like economy that is so online, which makes it easier, right? Versus if I had to physically go into a store and those things. So that
Yeah.
impulsivity and I can be
Yes.
conscientious. I don't know how high. I don't even know the measure for conscientiousness, but I can be, but my maybe attitude, right? That belief system versus do I do what I mean to do?
Right, kinda overrides
Isn't
it.
always great. Mhm. I
Well,
think
it's
about
good
it
you're aware.
more yeah, but
That's the
I
first
think about it
step.
with my kids. That I recognize some of that impulsivity in one of my kids in particular. And so really trying to think about what am I implicitly passing on when
Mm,
I model that for them. Like, "Ooh, how about this? Ooh, how about this?" That's not something I want to gift, right? That's not something I necessarily want to pass down. And so meaning that I need to pay more attention to what I am actively talking about related to that impulsivity, even if it's just verbalizing like, "This is cool my brain is like giving me the gimmies, right? That's a
mhm,
conversation we have in our house a
mhm.
lot is like, "Ooh, this is giving me the gimmies. I really want to get it." And like, okay, but this isn't a thing that I need. And so, right, I can have
Mm.
some of those explicit and implicit, but
Oh,
ugh,
yeah, yeah, so
hard.
and well, but, your list shopping by list, that could be overriding some of the maybe influence that you're giving them
Mm,
through impulsiveness,
mhm,
right? Talking through needs and
mhm,
wants, so there's a lot. I
absolutely.
think you're already a great financial parent,
Oh,
Mackenzie.
thanks. Thanks. I'm hoping that I have some strengths, but also recognizing that I probably have some areas I can work on.
Oh, we all do. Yeah,
Right? But
yeah.
so I do. I think, looking back at this big 3 and there like you said there's 6, there's other components here, but these kind of main
Mhm,
3 of behavior and how what I'm passing on intentionally and unintentionally to my kids, the knowledge and skills, and then
mhm,
same thing with personality and attitudes. We know they get
yeah.
their temperament from us. And their
Yeah,
personality is built on top of their temperament. And so, yes, all of these things roll into what we're passing on to our kids related to, I mean, everything, but related to money this season, right?
right, exactly, and
Mhm.
so those 3 drivers of financial well-being are very individual characteristics or
Mhm.
qualities,
Yeah.
factors versus the next 3 that we're gonna talk about, which are more structural, environmental,
Okay.
type of, qualities or factors that influence
Yes.
financial well-being, so
So
the
some of it that we influence in the first 3, more that we
Uh-huh.
influence. In the last 3, a lot more that won't be within our control all the time. Is kinda
No,
what you're saying?
uh-uh. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, first one,
Okay. Yeah.
social and economic environment. So what surrounds
Mm.
us, who our family is, our community. So that can limit or expand our opportunities, right? So family,
Mm.
friends, community, our upbringing, our home life. Think about
Yes.
a child whose aunt is an entrepreneur,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
So think of the opportunities that or exposure to the information that that child has versus someone who's not.
Mhm.
Right? Society is shaping and influencing
Oh, yeah.
us, our children through social media, advertisements, government programs and policies. Um, One that comes to mind for me is the child savings accounts, where like San
Oh.
Francisco, the entire all kindergartners in San Francisco get a child savings account. And so
Yeah.
this is money that can be used towards training and education.
Mhm.
And there's just really I think it really makes me go, wow, it doesn't matter how, and there's a lot of different programs that have been enacted. There are child savings acts on
Mhm.
on school level basis, city, states. Um, but it really instills in families who maybe have never aspired to go to college, it instills hope in them, no matter what the
Mm,
amount. So at $15, there's been some studies that
yes.
say that this, just by the symbolic act of saying, I think that you can go on to do great things, training
Yes.
that gives the family, the parents and the children,
Mhm.
this great feeling of like, okay, this is within reach for me. And so
Yes.
that's an opportunity that, for the child that doesn't have that
Mhm.
in their environment has a very different outcome.
Absolutely, and yeah, not that it's like the difference, but it's one of them,
Yeah,
right? Like,
it's one of
all
them,
of these
exactly.
things build onto each other to create whatever is the long-term well-being of people. Um,
Exactly. And
so
then
it's one
the
piece
other
of
one
it.
in that is it's the economic environment, so the economy, which is
Mm,
an obvious one, but
yes.
what's happening in the economy, whether it's a pandemic or great recession. With the pandemic, economic stimulus checks were available to
Yeah.
families, and that was not there, previously, and they've actually
Mhm.
stopped, so they're no longer there.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's the environment, social and economic, big ones.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So, okay, social and economic environment, lots of things that go into that. And something you said earlier was, we of course are talking about this in the context of parenting, but there's like other agents, right? Like it's kind of what you're getting
Yeah.
at. Like a socialization agent is the term that I've been learning from you. But
Yeah,
like
yeah.
parents are a main one, but in the social and economic environment are other things like
Right,
their
other
peers
family
and school
members.
and organizations they're a part of and society and media and yeah,
Yeah,
all the
thanks for that
stuff.
clarification. So yeah, the parents that are listening know that there are agents that are surrounding our children. You can think
Mhm.
about concentric circles, which we like to think
Ooh,
about, right,
yes.
in our scholarship, that are influencing your child. And then what we're talking about today are what influences our financial well-being specifically.
Mhm.
So yeah, so those three drivers of financial
Yeah.
well-being, and then the context.
Yes. And that they're getting this from us and from other places is what's in the environment. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Mhm. Okay,
Think
and
yeah.
then another tidbit of these 6 in the model, one of them is decision context, and this is the one that I was like, "Okay, I can talk about that. I know that one.
Oh
That one I'm familiar with, Suzanne, because
yeah.
I'm influenced by it."
You go, you go.
But so there were 3 main things that I thought about, and this is not based on anything. This is just like what came to my brain,
Mhm,
related to decision context. One is like how easy it is to choose,
mhm,
right? Like how easy or hard something is. So I even think of like eating out versus like making something at home. If we have food that's like very laborious to prepare, I am more likely to like, oh, can we just go get something? Right. And so the
mhm.
decision context of like spending money on going to get like going out to eat or staying in, the context is how easy it is to make food. Right. So I
Yeah.
thought of that. I also thought of being like pressured or influenced. So one, I think of like literal influencers on social media,
Mhm,
and I see this person that maybe like lives out or seems to live out my values, or I think they're cool, or they have this trait or whatever it is, and they suggest a product or a service, and then I'm influenced, right? The context I'm making on a decision, like, do I want to do this thing, is now influenced by this person and their values and these things, right? So
mm.
that value, so like influence is one within influence, a model about influence. Okay. But decision context when we're influenced, but I also thought of like when we're pressured.
Yeah.
My husband does not like salespeople. I mean, not that I'm like salespeople, yay, but he really doesn't because he doesn't like to be pressured, right? So, like when he's making a decision, he wants people to get out of his way. Especially when he's making a financial decision, like a large purchase, like an appliance or like a vehicle, or he does
Mhm,
not want anybody who might be pressuring him. And so, again, decision context. Even like one of my sisters is getting ready to get married, and the decision, like getting ready to make a wedding purchase, like a wedding dress, when you're in the context of like this store with a salesperson who gets commission with all of these things, that's a decision context. And like, should I make this decision right now? Should I delay this decision? um and then the other one
mm,
that you pointed out actually was like information overload or too many choices or decision paralysis. That's
mm.
also a decision context of there is too much here and I'm like not ready to choose, or I need all of it to go away, so I just choose one. right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes decision context is like, I might want to use the word exploited. Right?
Mhm.
Like toxic sales people or yeah, making it hard like we were talking about like making it hard to get out of a financial commitment or so that yeah, decision context. We all want to think like I am a rational consumer. But there's a lot of things that make us not so rational sometimes.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, so I think the example we were talking about was like retirement savings or wanting to
Mm,
save, right? And so if you're lucky enough to have an employer that provides retirement savings,
mhm.
this whole opting in that you're talking about, that if we don't have to think about it and we make, so that, oh, okay, a portion of our paycheck is going to automatically go into retirement savings. We're not giving the employee the choice when they sign on as an employee.
Right. Like,
They
would you
have
like to? Instead, we're
to.
like, we're gonna tell us that, like, we're gonna assume you want us to until you tell us you don't. Like
Yeah,
flipping that
exactly,
script.
and it's using our human tendency to not like the hassle of
Yeah.
having to deal with things like
Like, sure, that
making
sounds
phone
good.
calls or clicking a button, getting online and clicking a button.
Yes.
They take advantage of that for our own good. So that's an
Mhm.
example where something good is happening,
You're
right?
right. Thank you.
Versus
A
yeah,
positive example.
yeah, versus, you showed me your wallet earlier, which was your iPhone, right? And
Mhm.
so
Yep. I have
you
a
just
my
do
cards are right on my phone. That is where it keep I
yeah.
don't carry a purse because I set it down and I lose it.
Yeah, so, even
Mm.
just having Apple like, having the wallet, right? So you're
Mm.
scanning your phone, that makes it so much easier than pulling the wallet out of your purse
Mhm.
and counting out maybe money. Credit cards, there's definitely evidence that because it's abstract, people
Mhm.
spend more using credit cards. They don't make the
Yes.
connection like, "Oh, this bill, what I'm spending now, and it's gonna be due in 30 days."
Mhm.
Yeah, so the form that we're of currency that we're using influences
Absolutely.
us
And all
well
of
too.
those things are some of the context.
Yes, yes,
Mhm.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. So,
I say
w
one more here, right?
one more. So, what are the available opportunities in your environment? So, what
Mm.
options are open to you? And so, again, getting back to that economy. So, what economic opportunities are available? Do you live in a community that has well-paying, good-paying jobs? Maybe has public transportation to get to jobs so that you can earn a sufficient income to reach financial wellness. What's your social capital? So, like, who are your
Mm.
family? Who are your friends? Who's your network? Can you rely on them if you do have some kind of a financial shock to the system or some kind of financial need? And then it also gets
Absolutely.
into and because the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau they're the watchdog on the street when it comes to
Mm.
products and services. That's the other big piece
Mm.
is there access to safe and affordable financial products and services?
Oh, absolutely.
Safe and affordable.
Mm. Okay, so I'm gonna run down these 6 again.
Okay.
Behavior, knowledge, personality and attitudes, social and economic environment, decision context, and available opportunities. That's what
You
goes
nailed
into
it.
this model of financial action.
Right. So, and
Mhm.
with all of these adding up to our personal financial well-being, and so how
Yes, where we
satisfied
actually
we
end up.
are. Yeah, that's where we end up. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, awesome. Okay, well, our strategy for the week, and again, if you're watching this pattern from season to season, our strategy for financial parenting is to reflect, right? Is to look
Mhm.
at what our imprint is. What are the ham, right? What is the ham that's been passed down to us financially? And what ham do we want to pass on, whether implicitly or explicitly? And so okay, so a few questions that we can reflect on. What do we currently do that teaches our kids about money and finances on purpose or on accident? What do we want our kids to know in the long term? What do we want them to know about money and finances? And then what do we hope our kids do in the long term? What can we be doing right now to help influence what our kids actually do in the long term related to money? So, nice opportunities, just us to slow down. Like, again, something we don't always, like you said, we're not always thinking about our financial socialization of our children. It's like we got to slow down a little to give it that attention because there
Yes.
is long term, like we established in episode 1. There's a lot of long term. Their financial well being is influenced by it. Their overall well being can be influenced by it. So there's a lot of power here. And luckily, we can take this moment, this podcast episode, to just like, hey, yeah, what influences me? What are the things that are going to influence my kids? That some that I have some control over, and some that I don't. So,
Yeah. So I love that it's an invitation to parents who are listening to just go ahead and
mhm,
reflect
mhm.
on what were those lessons that you learned. Um, and I would say that, parents not to I would urge them to not wait until they're, like, perfect before they start having
Mm,
conversations. I think,
mhm.
there is some polling with parents who say that, I think about a third never talk to their children about money, and,
Yeah.
one of the reasons cited is they're fearful, and I think part of that
Mhm.
is that, like, I have to be the perfect money manager before I can start passing on lessons, and that
Oh,
really
wow.
isn't the case, I mean, they're
Yes.
learning lessons, as we said, from those different socializing agents, whether it's friends or school or,
Mhm.
a faith community, whatever it might be, and so it's okay for those to have a role, but parents are the primary socialization agents, and again, it's that underlying value of what you're hoping that they'll learn, and so I think you have to be
Yeah.
intentional about what you're doing and think and
Mhm.
take the opportunity to think about, "Oh gosh, okay, maybe I do need to bring them more into the conversation about how we spend money or how I'm
Yes.
shopping," and these are the takeaways I want them to have because, as parents, we all are working so that our children are going to be competent, so that they're going to be
Mm.
financially successful. That's what we want for our children. And so, what
Yes.
are the skill sets, the knowledge, the information, the values that they need to get there?
Oh, absolutely. And what I really hear in all of that too is like kind of giving us permission as parents to like, let's do this imperfectly, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like let's
Work in
let's try it
progress.
out. Yeah, I'm gonna do it imperfectly that yes, I can be impulsive. Fortunately, it's like I mean, I want to like give the caveat. I'm not like making horrible decisions that are putting my family at risk. um, right? That like luckily, like I'm doing this within the realm of our family can like I can afford to make this impulsive decision. Um, but right, that like that's something I'd like to work on. And I can still show up in this moment imperfectly, even though I have growth to do in that area and some others. I can still do some good, right? I can do more good than harm, in having these conversations. So let's show up imperfectly here. As I mean, yeah, as we reflect and as we imprint on our kids, whether we mean to or not. So,
Yeah, yeah,
oh,
and a
thanks for
lot
the little note. I like feel so warm and fuzzy, Suzanne.
Well, I'm gonna take it a different direction just for a second and just say
Yeah.
that, when you ask, adults how they learn about money, a lot of them will say, "Oh, well, from the school of hard knocks," right? From financial
Mm,
mistakes. I learned from my financial mistakes.
mm,
There's a fair proportion that will tell you that, and
yes.
that's not the answer you want your child giving
Mm,
to somebody that asks them that question, 20 years from now, right?
mhm.
That I learned from the school of hard knocks. Let's not make them go through the school of hard knocks. Let's give
Yes.
them the skill and the tool set that they need so that they are get it right from the first,
Mhm.
out the gate.
Mhm. Okay, and I hear you saying something kind of like the idea of experiential learning, like,
Yeah.
right? And maybe they learn the hard way, which, like, with high consequence. And in our upcoming podcast episodes that are coming up in a little bit down the season, we are gonna talk about that. How do we do that for different age groups? So
Yeah,
that they
and
don't have to learn it, like, with, like, high consequence as an adult, hopefully.
right, and I'm not saying and you gave a great example in an earlier conversation I had with you about you
Mhm.
had to give your daughter a hard lesson about taxes, and
Yeah.
that's the other thing I guess we should tell parents is that sometimes your heart has to hurt a little bit, to make it a growth experience for your child,
Mhm.
right?
There
So
could
do
be
you
a
wanna do you
discomfort.
wanna give that example of what you told me about what happened at the
Yeah.
store?
Okay, actually, I'm gonna leave them in suspense because I wanna save that for an upcoming
Okay,
episode of the age-based one. So I'm
perfect.
gonna leave
Okay,
them in
let's do it.
suspense on it. Y'all get ready. There's
Cliffhanger.
a conversation about taxes with my school-age child coming later this season.
Perfect.
That example's too like, I'm like, "No, that's the one that I have. That's the example I have. I gotta cling to it." Oh, funny. Can't wait. I'll tell y'all later, I promise. But for now, this brings us to our stop free talk space. So even if I'm not ready to share that example, I'm gonna have to come up with another one depending on what Mackenzie asks us.
Mm.
Hey, Kens, what do you
Hey.
got for us today?
Um, so I think through all of, listening through your whole discussion, I think what my question is like, what's the next step past? So
Mm.
you have a strategy, and like my brain was like, okay, then what's the next step past that strategy? Um,
You're cheating ahead.
I know part of it, but like, so I guess as we prepare for the upcoming episodes, and what we're doing is like, so we've task them with reflecting on where they're at. So then what would you say is like the first, and maybe it is what you mentioned in that conversation post, what you're just talking about with the reflections, but like, what is that first next step? I said to myself, oh, that's the thing I reflected on. That's what I want to change. What would be the next step in that process? Or do we want to wait on that?
I want to answer your question with a question is what I want to do.
Okay.
Why does reflecting not feel like enough? Like, why taking that time to, and I think reflection can mean more than one thing, right? It can be like a really like emotional, introspective of like the way you think about things. But there's also opportunities for reflection of like, okay, I say that my values are to spend my money wisely. When I go through my finances, am I spending my money the way I intend? Right. So I do think there can be like a really tangible way of doing this reflection. We talked about it in a very like in your head cognitive way. So that's one piece. I'm like, ooh, why is that not enough? But the other thing I want to say is like, yeah, just that thought process. I think we have to like pull it back that we're so quick that like, I want to make this change or I want to do this thing. And I think like we have to pull it back first to understand like why I do these things. Because it might be that you need to be more conscientious. I need to make a plan for this specific challenge, or I need to, I don't like the planning part. Like I want us to not yet. So not yet, Ken's, not yet.
Maybe is the next step. Let it sit in that for a little bit.
Well,
so that is my bossiness to your question. Suzanne, do you have something more friendly to say?
Well, no. Well, I was going to say, okay, so that we've asked them to reflect. So maybe what we could ask them to do is to, when they're reflecting, sit down with a piece of paper, blank piece of paper, 3 columns. And column 1 is, what did I learn as a child? What were the lessons? What were the values? Column 2 might be, what am I currently doing with my own child? And then maybe make some arrows between column 1, column 2, right? And see how they manifest. And then column 3 are the ideas about what do you want to be doing as a parent, right? And so make a list of those things and then make some arrows between column 1 and 2 to column 3.
Love that.
So that's intentional. It's getting it down on paper and it's still reflecting, but it's also, I'm a visual person. I don't know. So I think laying it out there and saying, oh, these are connected. Those are all look at the ham that went from column 1 to column 2. And, do I want that ham in column 3? No, let's keep it in column 1 and 2.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Science
of Parenting workbook coming your way. Maybe not. But
no, it's not. I'm just gonna throw that.
Mackenzie's like, stop saying things. But oh my gosh, I love that. That's a great.
Well, it's just your 3 questions, and we put it into a table.
Like,
and if you are partnered and you're listening and you're partnered, I think doing that exercise separately and then comparing them and having a conversation and saying, okay, are we doing this? Are we being the parents we want to be? That intention versus the behavior, because we don't, we don't stop to think through a lot of things that we do.
We have an opportunity here to do that.
Yeah. And this is the opportunity, right? You're listening, you're interested. So,
okay, Suzanne, you are, I wanted to say sold, not sold, permanently invited. Like, okay, Suzanne has clicked it in officially on the Slate Science of Parenting team. That modeled, I mean, I was already sold, but just in case anybody else wasn't, that's the good stuff she's bringing.
Absolutely. So in summary, give it a second, write it down, and then we'll come back to what the physical actions are in the next few episodes.
And if you really can't wait, at the end of episode 1, we did give like a really quick little rundown of some of the things you could be digging into. So if you really can't wait, you can go back and think about that. But more good stuff to come.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a good question. And immediately like, wait. I want to answer your question with a question. So yes, in today's episode, we've been digging into what is imprinted and what are we passing on, and what the research really tells us about what influences our money decisions. and our finances. So we have the model of financial action with those 6 things of behavior, knowledge, personality and attitudes, social and economic environment, decision context, and available opportunities. All that's going to influence our financial well-being, and all of those things are going to influence our kids, their financial well-being. So great to talk through this, but we've got more good stuff. I mean, we kept saying like, oh, we'll cover that soon. What is next? What is coming next, Suzanne?
All right, Mackenzie. In our next episode, we are going to talk about the goal of raising children to become adults with financial well-being. So we're really going to dig into how do we define financial well-being. A little spoiler alert: it's financial security and financial freedom. But what makes it? What are the quadrants that make up those two big concepts?
Yes, there you are with that visual.
Yeah,
again.
yeah. I know, right?
Oh, awesome. Well, we are excited to chat about that and everything else more this season. So thanks for joining us today on the Science of Parenting podcast. And in case you haven't heard, you can subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. And, you can just be sure that you never miss any new content from us that way.
Yeah, so come along as we tackle the ups and downs, the ins and outs, and the research and the reality all around the science of parenting.
The Science of Parenting is hosted by Mackenzie Johnson, produced by Mackenzie DeYoung, with research and writing by Barbara Dunn Swanson. Send in questions and comments to parenting@iastate.edu and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. For the full non-discrimination statement or accommodation inquiries, go to www.extension.iastate.edu/diversity/ext.